Hey everyone, welcome to Sweetcast. I am Clint. I am a writer of novels like All for Owen, but I also write comic books, and this is my comic book Downcast. I'm looking at launching this on Indiegogo probably in March. Don't hold me to that because I'm not 100% certain, but right now that's what it's looking like. So yeah, be excited for that. Now, you may have seen this already. Diamond Distribution, which is basically a monopoly that distributes all of the comic books in the United States. You may have seen it was like a month or month and a half ago, Joe Quesada was totally spiking the football and really excited and bragging that he made comic book sales go up, giving himself a nice pat on the back. Well, it turns out, first off, none of us believed that to start off with, because their sales numbers were really skewed. But now here Diamond has come out with something that's even more indisputable. After initially announcing that 2018's annual sales for comics had increased, Diamond Comics distributors had sent out a correction that, in fact, that is not the case. They went down. Now, a lot of people have gone over this. You're welcome to check it out. Google it. But they've gone down, and it's not good. Things have gotten smaller. The problem is that their money that they pulled in was a little bit higher, but the total units sold was a lot lower. The reason why that works is because they raised the prices on everything. So people are paying more money for fewer comics. That's the economic situation that we're in right now. Now, I bring up Alterna Comics and I put them in the title here because this story got buried. This was, I guess, 10 days ago. Only because there was a lot going on. But Alterna Comics has been committed to making cheaper books and making comics more accessible by getting distribution through good old newsstands. Now that, and probably a few other weird reasons, mainstream publishers and many comic book pros have been extremely overbearing to Alterna Comics, and they've been, just vicious at times. I follow them on Twitter, you will see it. People are vicious. Now, at the same time that Alterna Comics was getting dumped on 10 days ago, I guess, this article came out from Bleeding Cool. Now, initially, when Alterna Comics had announced that they were going to be lowering the prices for their comics by printing them on newsprint and making books that were as cheap as $1.50, and most of them about $2 or $1.99, something like that. Bleeding Cool had, I guess, good things to say, or it was just objective in the reporting. But now you have a totally different story. Same time Alterna's getting dumped on, you get this this story comes out. Comic book stores in your future. Cheaper comics would mean no comic shops. Now, comic shops are often used as sort of this leverage point, or this, it's basically like a threat. That's the way it comes across. If you don't pay higher prices for our comic books, then your local comic book retailer is going to suffer. People like their local comic book shop. They don't want them to go out of business. But the real perpetrator here isn't the local comic shop. It's Diamond Distribution, it's Marvel, and it's DC. Okay, so this article is kind of long, so I don't want to read through the whole thing. But essentially, he starts off by saying, it would be nice if comics were cheaper. And it's sort of a nostalgic thing. You remember when comics used to be, however much when you were a kid. They started out at 10 cents. They steadily rose in price over the years. And now it just doesn't make sense for them to only cost 40 cents or 50 cents or $1 or $1.50. Now, when he's making his arguments against having low-price comics, he always picks things like 40 cents or 10 cents or a quarter later on. This is a stupid argument. And the reason I call it a stupid argument is because in the same article, he basically says, well, here you go right here. The argument that comics sold so much better when they were 40 cents or however much because that person was a kid, that is how much they cost, is not a good argument. Nobody's saying that that's how much they cost when I was a kid, so therefore that's how much they should cost. Nobody's saying that. But comic books did sell better when they were less expensive. Not only that they were less expensive, they were easy to get. They were everywhere. You could go and buy them in a 7-Eleven, a grocery store, a newsstand. They were everywhere. Now they're in specialty stores that are, depending on where you live, they're few and far between. They may be hard to get to. And, if you're a new time reader or a kid, it might be a little outside of your comfort zone to go to a comic shop. Comics started out at 10 cents, but those days are long gone. Yeah, nobody is arguing that they should cost 10 cents, but do they need to cost $5? Okay, he goes into basically inflation, right? Movie tickets used to cost $4. Now they cost $14. So yes, nobody's against the fact that inflation happens. The problem is that the price of comic books have risen above inflation. Not only that, but there's so much focus on raising the prices as your customer base, the readership, goes down. It's like the comic book market has accepted the fact that they're dying. They're looking at it as though there's a cap on the market and that it's not going to grow any bigger, and there's nothing that they can do to find new customers. And that's a really, really poor way to look at operating a business. Now, I've started a few businesses over my lifetime. I've got a business, a small business, and it's profitable. Things work out. I'm not saying I'm an expert by any means. I did start one time years ago with my brother. We started a game store and we wanted to sell comics. I looked into it and it didn't financially make any sense for us to buy into selling comics. It's a really expensive thing to get into, and then it's going to take you a very long time before you actually start making profits. So right there, you have a difficulty for new comic shops starting. The only route you have are comic shops dying. They're hard to buy into. Okay, so now that this article, they just got done saying that your argument that comics would sell better if they were less expensive is stupid. And then the argument he gives us is that prices just go up everywhere, and then a cheaper comics does not mean more sales. Really doesn't it? Now, I disagree with this, and the reason I disagree with this is because basic economics of supply and demand, those two things affect price. You can change price and absolutely change how much people buy. Now, you might lower the price on comics, and if that's all you do, and you assume that your customer base is going to remain the same, then yeah, they're going to, assuming they read all the same comic books, they're just going to get those comics, and it's not going to make them buy more units. But if you're going and trying to get your comic books in front of more people, if you're being proactive with your marketing and seeking new customers, then that changes things. The problem is, Diamond, Marvel, DC, they're not planning on any new comic book stores opening. They're planning on comic book stores closing. They're planning on fewer readers. They already have this closed off mindset. It's scary when you think about it. Okay, his next argument is that many store owners don't want to sell cheap stuff like 25-cent comics because it's not worth it for people to go to a store to buy a 25-cent comic. Okay, this is really annoying because, yeah, of course you're not going to go out of your way to go buy a 25-cent comic, but you might go out of your way to buy, a whole month's worth of reading for 25 cents per comic. This is, again, with Alterna Comics. Most people I know, when they're buying Alterna Comics, they're not buying one title. They're buying like every single title that Alterna has. They're buying everything because why wouldn't you? It's cheap enough. That's how a publisher gains readership, loyal readership, that are really going to be sticking with just the one publisher because it's going to provide them with all the value that they're looking for. Okay, so another problem here, I agree that, the brick and mortar comic book store, that model isn't really working anymore. And that this has, something to do with how the current system is and current publishers and of course Diamond, but it also has to do with just technology has changed. Every just regular bookstore out there, not everyone, but you might find a few regular local bookstores. They've all gone out of business though. Borders has gone out of business. Barnes & Noble is on its way out. And that's because Amazon. Because it's convenient and it's less expensive. That has less to do with local comic book shops and caring about people and more to do with just basic economics. So I agree, things have got to change. But don't try and guilt people by, like they're putting their local comic book shop out of business. This is absurd. Okay, he goes over, he's got tons of comics in his dollar bin, no one's buying them. Okay, well maybe, you can go buy a random issue, but they're not going to be in order of any kind. Obviously that you'd have to be lucky, I guess, to find the exact issue that you're looking for. If people are entertained by a comic, then the price in their mind is worth it. Well, I would disagree with that. You can talk to anybody, any gamer, and this is how the economics go. I've heard this explained so many times. Tell me I'm wrong, okay? Tell me I'm wrong. They look at a $60 video game. They say, if I spend $60 on this video game, then, therefore, I can go spend hours and hours and hours on this game and get that $60 worth in entertainment. Now, you do the same thing and you look at $60 worth of comics. $5 a piece. Let's say you're getting 12, it's going to be more like 10 to 12 books, okay? How many hours of entertainment are those books going to give you? The way I explained that is exactly how gamers explain it. That's exactly how I think most people explain it. Even people that are into games like, and I'll go over here, Magic the Gathering. You look at the price for packs, for a deck, for single cards, and then you weigh it against how much entertainment and fun you're going to get with those cards. Now, I bring up Magic because they have the same kind of mentality, it seems like, or they're at least dabbling in it, and that is that they have a certain customer base that's very collector-oriented. There's a secondary market where people are reselling things that have gone up in price, and therefore they want a piece of the action. And so, if you're unfamiliar, this is Ultimate Masters, and this has been wildly hated by many Magic the Gathering players because they basically reprinted all these cards that everybody needed reprints of because the prices were so high in the secondary market. So they reprinted them, but they made the prices astronomical, and it's still really rare that you're going to get, the card that you need. People don't like being abused like this. I really think that's the same thing that's going on here. They're abusing their customers. Okay, so he's got a contradiction here when, as he's owned Rodman Comics, he's realized he's not going to make money off of cheap people. Some people do make money off of cheap people. It depends on what kind of business you have. For example, laundromat, those are totally viable businesses even today. Of course, they have to change to work with the times, whether you're going to be taking coins or you're going to be taking cards or whatever your business setup is. They still make money because people that can't afford to have their own washer and dryer are going to use laundromats, and those might be cheaper people. So to say you're not going to get money from them is absurd. It's just that's how your business is structured. It's not targeted toward everybody. It's targeted toward collectors that have money. Now, same article. Let's see. I got to scroll down here a little bit. He actually says the exact opposite. Here we go. Millionaires are not my regular customers. I read articles about Nicolas Cage going to a Comic-Con. He spent thousands of dollars there and most likely made a lot of people happy. Okay. So that's not going to happen for you. So if cheap people are not your customers and rich people are not your customers, then who are your customers? Well, the middle class. And of course he admits this, but middle class people always are weighing, again, if I spend this much money, how can I get the most for my money? There's a perceived value. So this article bothered me on a lot of levels. I don't like your local comic shop being used as a tool against you. That's not how businesses are run. I'm a capitalist. If you have to be guilted into paying somebody money and that's how they stay in business, then that's not a good business. It has to change. It's like if I had a business and I just depended upon friends and family and loved ones to keep me in business, that means I have a poor business model. You need to provide something that people want and they're willing to pay for it. So I don't know all the answers on how to correct this. I'm not even sure that comic book shops are going to be saved. Things are just changing. That's the reality. But I do know that blaming lower prices on comics, like which Alterna is doing, isn't going to help anything. Raising prices on comic books is not going to help. It's a short-term fix. And eventually, those customers, those paying customers, are going to leave. They're going to collapse, and the industry is going to fall. So I'm wrong all the time. So let me know in the comments below what you think. How would you save comic book shops? What do you think the industry needs to do to change? And tell me how else you disagree or agree with this article by Rich Johnson in Bleeding Cool, and I will see you next time.